UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to UAP Crossfire, right here on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And we all recognize you, the audience, as one of the greatest audiences on the planet. Tonight, we've got a very, very special show. And it's actually an anniversary of something I'm going to tell you about in just a moment. But look, there's a lot happening right now in the UFO UAP field. One of them, of course, the biggest story currently is the 3I Atlas object, currently coming from interstellar space through our solar system. This is on the heels of two other objects that came in. A lot of chatter about that. And tonight, one of our co-hosts, Padre Dan Carlson, sent out a note that explained that it's currently been detecting the 3I Atlas object spewing, of all things, crazy things, cyanide. Now, with that being said, there's so much more going on. But 30 years ago today, August the 28th, 1995, a very special broadcast was broadcast on the Fox television network. And in a way, I'm actually somewhat responsible for that. And I'll tell you what I mean. Back in 1993, my wife, Vicki Cooper Acker, the publisher and the executive editor of UFO Magazine, and myself, who was the director of research and the media liaison to the media here in the area, were invited to go to Vienna, Austria, where we were presenters at the First World UFO Congress in Vienna. And the one thing I will say about that place, never in my life, and I am a coffee lover, did I have a better cup of coffee than I had in Vienna. I don't know what that was, but my heaven, it was spectacular. And there we met a number of British UFO researchers that were also invited. Jenny Randles was there, John Spencer and his then wife, Anne, and Philip Mantle and his then wife, Susan. It was a lovely, lovely time. And one morning I was downstairs having a cup of that delicious coffee. Mantle came down, and I, of course, knew who he was. I recognized his name, didn't really know the guy, but we sat down and had a lovely chat. And during that chat, he said something to me that kind of surprised me. And I said, well, I'm going to have to check on that when I get back to LA. And what was that thing? Well,
what was it?
Exactly, Chris. What was it?
What was it?
That's right. He said he had heard rumors that Steven Spielberg, the famous movie producer, director, had some secret UFO footage that, in fact, may have shown an alien being from Roswell being autopsied, dissected. Well, I had never heard anything like that. So I told him, I said, well, you know what? I'll tell you what, I'll go back. I know a number of producers in town, and I will call them up and make some inquiries. Well, one of the people I called up was tonight's guest, Robert Kiviat. And Robert, whom I met when he first came out to the LA area from New York, who had been a writer, a journalist, had worked with people like Geraldo Rivera, basically had been a reader of our magazine. And he had a deep interest and fascination in the UFO topic. So I called Bob up and I asked him about that. And from what my memory says, he didn't know anything about that, but he said he would start doing some research to see if there was any truth to it. Well, I told him where the story came from. And as a little bit of time moved along, I discovered that Phil Mantle was associated with a fellow by the name of Ray Santilli. Now, Ray Santilli, it ended up being the person that claimed that he had footage that he secured from a World War II combat photographer that in 1947 was tasked to film this autopsy in probably the aftermath of the Roswell crash. Now, during that period of time, I had a wildly popular radio show on the cable radio network called UFOs Tonight. And among my listeners were some people whose fathers had been actual combat photographers in the Marine Corps and the Army during the war, okay? And this listener put me in touch with those gentlemen, and we were all busting our brains trying to figure out who, in fact, this mysterious combat photographer might have been. Now, Bob Kiviat, okay, through his network that he was working for, the Fox network, ended up being sent over to the UK when Santilli was showing this to mostly news organizations and producers literally all around the world. And I'm talking about everywhere. As a little bit of time went along, okay, they began putting what today is known as the Alien Autopsy footage, which aired for the first time on August the 28th, today's date, as a matter of fact, 1995, literally 30 years ago from today. Now, Fox ended up airing that 3 times. They garnered huge ratings from that. And the controversy started, and it's never ended, even up to this day. Now, that special was hosted by Jonathan Frakes, okay, from Star Trek, The Next Generation, Commander Riker. He was the presenter. And all throughout that broadcast, they stressed that if by chance they found out that this was not as depicted, in other words, a fraudulent bit of film footage, that they would announce it. Well, Bob is here tonight to give us the story. Let me bring him on. And Bob, welcome to UAP Crossfire. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, it's good to be with you guys. It's quite a show and quite a story, Don, you start to tell, but there are a couple of little corrections I want to make, if I can.
Of course you do.
The first correction is Fox didn't send me anywhere. If you might remember, Don, we had met, you're right, exactly like after I came from New York. I worked on Unsolved Mysteries for a few years and actually delivered some of the higher ratings. We'll get into that in a minute, on UFOs in general and Unsolved Mysteries before I even got my own shows. So I'm kind of like very bemused when I hear people talk about the ratings of Alien Autopsy, when actually one of my higher ratings ever about UFOs was a show I did for Unsolved Mysteries about the Guardian UFO video that was shot in Canada, we believe. And it was a very fascinating case, and a case that I'll be getting into more in a new project I'm working on now, and we'll talk about before hopefully we end.
I was sure Fox had sent you over there.
No, the story is pretty close, Don, but what happened was we were ending a show. Let me go back a step. Alien Autopsy, which people will find out a lot more the next year when this new project of mine comes out, will be it'll be very elucidating for people to understand the chronology of events. The first order of event was I would have never touched the Roswell story with anecdotal, the kind of bullshit you hear on Capitol Hill now from David Grush and all this baloney about I heard it from someone. I heard this from somebody. Hearing things from somebody is as anecdotal as it gets, and I don't believe any real major case in both the crime world, courtrooms, and even when it comes to UFOs and aliens, if they exist. Anecdotal evidence, someone saying something isn't going to mean anything. So the idea that Roswell had all these witnesses over the years, and that there was allegedly, Dennis, Glenn Dennis, the mortuary guy who put together boxes, small ones for little small creatures, assuming they were aliens. Walter Hout from the Roswell, Air Base, telling people for sure there was a crash, there was something here. All these anecdotal pieces of evidence made me extremely bored, to be honest with you, as a journalist. There was nothing I could get into. So I would stay away from that one story probably the rest of my life if it wasn't for a rumor that came out in 1994 that a film was being made, possibly by Steven Spielberg, that was going to involve lost footage or found footage of an alien or UFO material. It was pretty clear there was something going on, but it wasn't really clear. I got a phone call from the editor at Omni magazine, where I used to write for Omni about the face on Mars. I wrote a big cover article about the face on Mars and what NASA was saying or not saying about the face on Mars and the pyramids nearby. So they were very happy with me at Omni, because before I left New York, I contracted with them to write this article. And when it finally came out, and when I moved here to LA, it finally came out because a Mars Observer, the spacecraft that I wrote about, went off into space. $1 billion gone, went up into space. No one knows where it went. It's gone. $1 billion lost. Omni asked me to write the article for the new mission that was going to be planned with a backup craft. So then Omni was talking to me at that time a little bit because of my article being written and then coming out in 94. Right about the time the article came out about the face on Mars, they had heard rumors in New York about this alleged movie, and Steven Spielberg was involved. So they called me too, Don, and they said, hey, could you look into this as well? And so I had already been thinking about, my next steps, because you may remember the TV show Encounters I went to after Unsolved Mysteries was now ending. What happened was a year before, I pitched the specials department at Fox, while I was still at Unsolved Mysteries, basically. I pitched them a series called Supernatural Eye. And in this series, every hour, we would look at some of the greatest cases of the unexplained. And one of those, the premiere episode, my goal was to do on the Alien Autopsy. So that was a goal that I had once I heard there might be this Alien Autopsy that existed. But in the meantime, I didn't know if it existed or not. I looked into it, and then I found out there were rumors coming out of England that on a morning talk show, some guy named Reg Presley, this rock and roll guy from the 60s, had literally seen this footage. So I said, okay, that's it. Let me go figure out who Reg is. So in the meantime, I had known Colin Andrews, the crop circles researcher, and he was in one of my shows later on, actually, but I had not had him on any show at this point. And I called Colin, and I said, Colin, what do you know about this? And he says, oh, no, I've seen it. It exists. I said, what exists? He says, a piece of footage that looks like an alien laying on a table with a bunch of either sheets or something wrapped around the alien. You could see the eyes, you could see part of the body, but mainly you could see the head. It was an alien head. And you could see these doctors moving around, and there was sort of a lantern in the background, very dark scene. So I said to Colin, I said, well, what does that mean? Is that a actual autopsy? And what is that? And he said, well, we're told that's the retrieval of the alien at Roswell being kind of worked on by some medics, and there's someone moving around in the foreground. And I said, all right, look, if there's footage, I want to see it. Can you send me a copy? He said, nope, I can't send you a copy because I'm dealing with a guy named Ray Santilli. And there you go. There's that name, Don. So Ray Santilli basically was easy to find. I tracked him down, and I said, Ray, I do shows about these type of subjects. I promise you, I said, if it's a fake, if it's a hoax, I'm going to be all over that no matter what. He said, look, if you could arrange meetings in LA, I'll come to LA and I'll show the footage at meetings. I said, really? I said, well, yeah. What am I going to see if I set these meetings up, Ray? He says, you're going to see, Bob, it's going to blow your mind. You're going to see Harry Truman walking around the crash scene. You're going to see debris. You're going to see Bob, you're not going to believe it. I said, Ray, let's stop the selling. I already heard from Colin Andrews. He described this dark scene, this body laying on this kind of table, and these doctors moving around, and then we have some kind of a sheet over the alien. So what is that? He ignored me completely when I said that. I said, Ray, what is that scene? He said, Bob, I promise you, if I come out there with the footage, you're not gonna believe what you see. It's amazing. I said, all right, Ray, I'll tell you what. If you're willing to fly to Los Angeles, I'll set the meetings up. I proceeded to set up meetings at Fox, NBC, CBS, UPN was around at that time, and I think I named them all. And basically, I set those meetings up. And just before the meetings were about to happen, Ray called me up in early April of that year, 1995, 30 years ago, and said, due to some technical problems we're having with the film, I'm not going to be able to come see you with this. And of course, I'm devastated because now I've embarrassed myself. I've promised 5 networks they're going to see a potentially real alien autopsy or alien dissection or alien examination. I wasn't sure. And then I said, I'm even being told Harry Truman's going to be seeing the footage. And I said to the groups, NBC, Fox, ABC, NBC, I had to apologize to them. I had to say, look, sorry, this guy's flaking. He's not coming. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll let you know. They said, okay, keep us posted. In the meantime, Santilli and I keep talking, and I found out from Ray that he said that Harry Truman could be seen walking around the crash scene. I said, well, I heard that from Colin. Are you saying to me that's what I'm going to see? He said, absolutely, you're going to see that and so much more. I said, well, how are we going to do this, Ray? He says, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to be having a screening on May 5th at the Museum of London. And if you come see me, Bob, for a couple of days before, I will show you the footage privately. You can sit in the front row. I can get you into this screening, and you'll see it both ways, privately, and then you'll see it in the big theater. I'll make sure you get a chance to see it. And if there's any chance you want it, I'm sure you'll be able to close a deal with me on this. I said, all right, well, look, Ray, I'm pretty known for doing these things, so I'll get on a plane, I'll come out. And he asked me like 3 times, are you coming out for Fox? Or are you coming out? I said, no, I'm coming out my own. This is not for Fox. We don't know if Fox is going to want this or not. I have my history with Fox and NBC mostly. But Ray, I said, at this point right now, I've made meetings set up at 5 places. And after I see you, I'll be having meetings here back in LA. So, let's keep things on track, and I'll be on the plane on May 5th. Sure enough, I get out there. I see this thing. First of all, I get into his office, and he's there with a guy named Gary Shoefield and a guy named Chris Carey. Carey was introduced to me as his sales manager, handling sales. And then there was Gary Shoefield, apparently was someone in the business to some degree, and he was Ray's partner. And he went with Ray to get the cameraman, or went to purchase the footage from the cameraman. And so the story was pretty clear at this point. They were going to show me the footage before anybody else, and I'm expecting to see this darkly lit scene with a lantern or something in the background, with a sheet over the alien, and a few doctors moving around. And the next thing you know, he pops in a tape, and it's this brightly lit scene with doctors in hazmat type suits, and everything we know the Alien Autopsy became. And I just, my mouth was hanging open. I was like, this is not what I expected. It's better than I expected. But Ray, I said, if you had this kind of footage, you should have told me that. There's no need for a surprise. This doesn't look right to me, first of all, because now I'm expecting to see the other scene. Let me see that. And he pops in what he calls a 10 footage. And I went, Ray, stop right there. These two do not look anything alike. Not even in the same ballpark. I don't know how to even calibrate these two together, but why don't you show me the debris footage while we're doing this? So he shows me the metal debris, and I said, Ray, all I can say is off the first look at this, it's going to be hard for anyone to accept these three films came from one cameraman in 1947, and I'm just telling you, don't shoot me, I said, but this is what people are going to say. Trust me. So we get into the screening the next day. I'm sitting there in the front row, or second or third row, whatever. And there is the bright lit scene. That's all he shows. And he only shows about 10 minutes of the bright lit scene. And he turns the lights back on again. Everybody's kind of commiserating and talking and kind of murmuring going on. Ray starts taking questions from people. And of course, my first question was going to be, what the hell? What happened to the other two films? How do you separate this? How do you just show one and not the two other ones? So, basically, he didn't really answer those questions. I asked him as we were leaving the theater. And, as we're leaving the theater, I'm seeing one guy walking around, kind of quiet, got kind of gray hair, a mustache. He looks kind of out of place. He's wearing a suit and a tie. People are talking all around, but he's not really saying a word. I kind of watched that guy a little bit. We all start to move out to the pub where there are going to be drinks. I guess people are going to have a drink and talk a little more about the film. And as I get ready to go into the pub, I see a guy walking up the street with these two girls on the arm, like one girl on each arm, under his elbow there, And he's kind of walking in as kind of the big stalker. Here he comes. And I start squinting, and I'm going, wait a minute. That's the guy who was in the suit walking around thinking like he didn't speak English, right? And again, now Ray had pointed in the direction of that guy earlier and said he was the investor in the film. So I already have a little bit of an inkling at this point that guy coming down the street now is taking his suit off. He's wearing an open shirt, wearing kind of medallions and stuff. There's jewelry. And he's got these two girls on his arms. And then I realized the two girls are Ray's assistants that I had met earlier at his office. So now I know these three, the two girls and him, they're tied to Santilli. And he walked right up to me and he says, Bob, nice to meet you. Volker Spielberg. I went, aha, Volker Spielberg.
Now let me stop you right there. Because I also want to go to our panel. I'm sure they got questions for you. But after some of this started to come together for me, I put on my cop hat right here. And I started thinking about this. And suddenly it hit me. Philip Mantle was working close with Santilli. I thought then, I still think now, I was freaking played at UFO Magazine by these sons of bitches. Now, with that being said, let me go first to Commander Cobra. Commander Cobra, I'm assuming you're there.
I am. I'm back, sir.
Okay. Do you got anything you'd like to ask?
Well, Bob, it's good to see you again. It's been a while since we had a chance to chat with Don. We had a good time. I guess, God, it's close to a year ago that we were all together chatting up on one of the shows. And don't forget, you need to explain to the audience a little bit what the background, the kind of the quals that you have in the producing side of this. I don't think folks always understand that role. But in this particular case, what's your big aha moment with all this? I mean, all the stuff you just deduced as you're talking about, you're looking at the films and you're seeing stuff, and then you're starting to put people together, gals on guys' arms, the whole thing. I mean, I can't believe anybody would be that silly with you. You're pretty sharp, and you've been around this particular part of the business a while to think they would get away with that. So what's your take on all that?
First of all, it's very clear. Don kind of hinted at it earlier. I never presented to Fox this footage was real. It was absolutely an investigation on camera. I presented to Fox very clearly as, look, this guy is claiming that he's got this footage, and he's claiming that and it's real, and he's claiming that we all have to air it on the same night, August 28th, to maintain our level of exclusivity, because he's going to sell it different countries, rights to different producers or networks for that region where they are, which he has every right to do if he controls the footage. So we had no choice but to either say yes to that demand or pass on the project. So I said to Fox, look, with that kind of a demand already in place, we have to approach it only as an investigation. We're not going to probably get to the bottom of it in the 6 weeks we have. Initially, I thought Don could come in and work on it and research. I was hoping to bring in a few other people. Fox forbade me from adding more people to the staff than me and my top journalist from New York, Tom Seligson, top writer, investigator for years in New York. I had worked with him at now it can be told with Geraldo Rivera. So my presentation to Fox was, you don't have a news division. This is before Fox News ever came into being. Fox Network didn't have that. So I said, if we do it with you guys, we're going to be doing it purely as an investigation. We're doing it with an investigation zeal, like a journalist would do. And if we determine it's a hoax, if we do it at Fox, I told Fox, you guys will have to have a plan with me that we'll go public during the production and do a in the middle of breaking news. All the Fox-owned stations around the country. Don't forget, no Fox News now. It was just Fox Network, O&Os, owned and operated stations, affiliate stations, 100 and something stations around the country, Channel 11 in LA, Channel 5 in New York. I don't know exactly where other people are, but so Fox had a plan with me that if we determined there was a fraud before August 28th, we would break it as a fraud, say blank you to Santilli, not care about the other networks around the world. We would expose it as a fraud if we could. So our attitude was, to answer your question as producers, if we could break this as a fraud, we will. And we tried every which way we possibly could. We talked to Kodak about the film. Unbeknownst to us, they had already brought it to Kodak in England. England felt that there was a good chance the film was from 1947, 27, or 67, 3 different years, and had an edge code of a square and a triangle on the film. So we were going in with a plan to either verify that was true or debunk if that was true. We never really got a chance to do that thoroughly because Santilli promised us, no matter who I made the show with, we would see the actual film of the alien on it. And if we couldn't punch a hole through it to check its age or check whatever, at least we'd see the alien on the film. We never saw that either. So we were left with a real hard decision going through the production. Do we tell the public it doesn't check out? Or do we leave it to the public to see what they think? We didn't know enough about the Kodak test to know for sure before the first airing. We probably didn't even know about the second airing. But I told Fox we would always stay on it. And so if Santilli's going to be very difficult to work with, we're going to do our best to tell the public what we know. And
now, let me say this. Let me say this because I think it's very important. I inject this at this point in the conversation. UFO Magazine went balls to the wall on this story. And I called Ray Santilli, talked to him twice. Later, I found out that Santilli lied through his teeth to me. But I called him on two things that they sent. They sent me an alleged facsimile of the sticker that was on this purported old military footage. And this guy who was touted as an American also, according to Santilli, sat down with them and gave them a statement that was recorded. Then Santilli gave the recording to one of his secretaries to type up a transcript. They sent us at UFO Magazine the transcript. I immediately sat down and I read the thing 3 times, one after another. And I knew then that this was not real. How did I know that? By the verbiage that this cameraman reportedly used. One of the things he said was, when I was in the forces, that is not the way an American regards his military or speaks about his military service. He was in the Army, I was in the Marine Corps, I was this, I was that, I was in the military. Not the forces. That is basically a British term. So I got a hold of Santilli and I said, hey, this doesn't sound like any American ever said this. He said, what do you mean? And I told him. He said, oh, well, my secretary, maybe she misheard something and blah, 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 blah. I said, Ray, I was a criminal investigator. I did a hell of a lot of recording testimony, witness testimony, or witness statements, okay, that later had to be typed up. That is done exactly as spoken. I don't buy this, okay? Well, he could have cared less because later he was to sell this thing for $25 to $35 a pop, all right? And he made untold millions. I'm sorry I went on so long. Padre, you're up next. You got anything you want to jump in there with?
I remember the first time this aired and what my reaction was as a viewer. And I said to myself, wow, not really having any framework, not necessarily the critical eye of somebody who has experience in film. And I'm wondering, Bob, if you could tell me, prior to the airing of this, was there any consideration brought to you, any caution about how its release could impact society, culture, the world? Did anyone tell you, please don't release this? Give us a little bit of flavor of that.
Well, I love what you just said because it just to sum this up, okay? As I told the story before, there were 3 films. It became very clear to me you have a package of 3 films. My attitude as a filmmaker and as a journalist is, I'll get my chance. I'll get my chance sometime in the very near future to break down these 3 films, find out if they have any connection to each other, find out what that might be if it does exist, and then tell the full story. I'm proud to say from 95 to 98, I was able to tell it. It took 3 years. We told it, we exposed it, we found the 10 footage to be an outright fraud. We tied it directly into Santilli, and Santilli was looking for a new special effects guy to go make a brightly lit scene because the original one he made with this 18 music was not that great. So you have to realize I'm answering this question of yours in hindsight, but the first question was always the main question. If this is a real film of an alien, or it's just a fake of an alien, but it presented as possibly real by this guy Santilli, how would the public react to that? And I think we determined very quickly that the public can handle if there is an alien film, if there's footage of an autopsy, if we ever do see a film of an alien walking around, the White House lawn, whatever it might be, the American public and the world can handle it. That I think we proved, whether or not this film is real or not, the concept of it could be real did not freak anybody out. So if that was Santilli's goal, if that was what Volker Spielberg wanted to do, if that's what the people at AK Music wanted to do with the tent footage, well, you know what? The tent footage would not have done it. The full autopsy who created that scene, that was a good test of the public. So I saw it as a win-win no matter what. That if the footage turned out to be fake, which it did turn out to be fake, by the way, and by the way, now you've got these claims coming out of Santilli and his group that, we had real film, it disintegrated, we did fake the autopsy, we faked it, but you know what? We used the real frame somehow to create that footage. These people are nuts, but get this one. There's a documentary coming out next year by Sky TV where John, the director, has been calling me endlessly, is saying, oh no, we believe we have possible proof that it may be real. These people are nuts. And by the way, the British take great pride in hoaxing people and then applauding people that hoax people. And that's historically accurate, by the way. They do. Not as a country, but if you can see the history of hoaxes in Britain, they're applauded. They're not exactly thought of as fraud. Hey, by the way, Fox and I paid $200,000 Santilli for that footage. Trimark Pictures paid another $100,000 for that footage. We're now
saying, your money back.
What was that? Yeah.
I hope you got your money back.
This is fraud outright. They said in the contract with me and Fox, we believe it to be an autopsy of an extraterrestrial. They perjured. If it's law, they perjured themselves. They lied. So there's a lot of things to dig into here. But guess what? Capitol Hill, Lou Elizondo, David Grush, all these clowns are listening to Hal Puthoff, and Hal's out there going, the alien autopsy could be real. Wow, really? These people are exactly like Santilli, and I'll be showing the public this year how Capitol Hill was bamboozled. And by the way, I don't think I was bamboozled by anybody. I told Santilli, if that's fake, I'll show it to be fake. And we did. In the World's Greatest Hoaxes, it's fake. What's really interesting is a few years after we did World's Greatest Hoaxes on Fox and showed why it's fake, and we took the labor to do that, I found the guy, John Humphreys, who made the Breadlin scene. And with all due respect, by the way, Philip Mandel did assist me in exposing both the tent footage and finding John Humphreys, the guy who made the brightly lit scene, the brightly lit, scene you know. And when I found him in 2002, I just sent a letter to his lawyer, manager, whatever you want to call him, and I said, hey, it's the 30th anniversary. We're not looking at fraud. We're not looking at things like that. We're definitely curious how you're going to react as lawyers or barristers or business managers, because we are coming on strong now. We want Santilli to admit the utter fraud. Don't talk about you had old film frames. He made a movie with Warner Brothers UK in 2006 where they claimed the movie that Santilli had actual frames at some point of the autopsy. This is nonsensical. John Humphreys told me in 2002 in a non-disclosure agreement process with me that no one helped him. He literally created the body. He's a very good sculpture and special effects guy. He played the part of the surgeon, cutting the organs out. He knew where the organs were if he put them in. He knew how to go about dealing with the leg and everything else. He told me there was no one helping, and there were no frames. There was no real autopsy footage. None of that. He created it. He faked it. He wasn't happy that Santilli did not share in the proceeds, the money. And Santilli had promised him that he would get paid, which he never did, according to his manager. We'll call him Manager Russell. So basically, for 3.5 years after that, from 2002 to 2005, almost 6, I'm out there talking to the TV networks about doing the definitive hour on the alien autopsy, because he found John Humphreys, the guy who made the amazing body and couldn't do the creature. You know what they told me? Bob, you already did it. You exposed the hoax. We already believe it's a hoax. Everybody got that. We understand. So in 2006, when the movie comes out from the UK called Alien Autopsy, it made no dent at all in America. We did not believe for a minute that changed the story at all. But in England, people started to say, wait a minute, there was really film at one point? You mean they actually faked it, but they faked it to match the original film using frames? That is so nonsensical that I'm telling you right now, for anyone to even believe that for a second, they're either shysters trying to make money, they're just stupid, and there's no way that's even conceivably possible. Because I was on top of the story when it was happening. There was none of that. So they're making
Chris?
up the story.
Yeah.
Chris, you're up, buddy. You're up.
Unreal.
Oh boy. Hey Bob, first thank you for being on the show. Appreciate it. This is a hell of a story. First thing I want to ask you is, when this was approached to you, did anybody do a background on these guys to say, hey, you know, what kind of guys these are?
Well, all I can tell you is what I'm telling people in this new project, we're writing it up now. We were given the opportunity to show a mysterious film. If you're the newspaper, whatever, I won't mention the New York Times because they blew the UFO subject, in my opinion, for the next decade. If we can try to fix it, we'll try. But this whole nonsense of 2017, black auras and all that nonsense, forget all this. As journalists, we didn't look at it like we had to prove it was real. We were saying, this is a film. These are the people that claim it's real. They claim, here's their story. Jonathan Frakes, my host, kept saying, Don, as you mentioned, until we know more, you'll have to decide. It took 3 years to tell the full story. We finally told it. Fox got their ratings out of it. Oh, good for them. I got whatever kind of producer work I could get from it. But the most important thing was we followed the credo we said. We were going to expose it if we could, and we did. No, we did not have time to look at like background checks.
The reason I'm saying that is because I'm looking at the autopsy right now, the film. Yeah. And I'm like, this is, I mean, when you finally saw it, did like you have somebody come in and say, hey, like a medical examiner and say that's not how you do an autopsy?
Did you watch the show?
What's that?
Did you watch the
I'm watching the YouTube video of the autopsy right now. I mean, I got it on my other computer.
Unfortunately, you weren't ready. You weren't ready for our call tonight. I'm kidding. In the movie, in my show, we make it very clear. 2 pathologists. Now, Cyril Wecht, I'll agree. I picked the controversial government conspiracy, kind of like experienced pathologist for the JFK assassination. He was very involved in the JFK assassination. One of the principal autopsy doctors who believed there's no way that Lee Harvey Oswald shot from the school book depository. There's no way it could have been the magic bullet, as they call it. So when I got Cyril Wecht to watch the film, he believed it was real. Stan Winston, special effects. He believed it was possibly real. And this is
you're a pretty smart guy, and I would imagine you saw this film. You must have had 1,000 questions.
I don't believe anyone by looking at the film, and that's how good a job Humphreys did. Sometimes people get lucky. In the photographic realm, you could have an idea to shoot a film. And then all of the things just come together just right. The lighting's just right, the graininess, it's dark, the camera's going out of focus every time you move in. Yeah. Everything seemed to just work kind of just right to make it appear to be a mysterious film. We had 6 weeks total from the moment we got the film in our hands on VHS, or better yet, on Beta SP conversion tape. We never got an actual film. We got Beta SP material video quality, broadcast quality. But then we were able to look at that as its own element, and then we showed it to Dr. Cyril Wecht. We showed it to the C.L. Milroy in England, another guy who did 20,000 autopsies. I mean, you're talking about 2 guys who probably together did close to 40,000 autopsies, and they couldn't tell if it was real or not.
I've never done an autopsy in my life, but I can tell you that this thing, I mean, first of all, you could see that the first thing is suspicious to me, looking at this thing, is that there's only one mangled part of the body. That's the leg. The top part of the body is pristine. Now, if you're in a crash, especially from outer space, wouldn't you be a little more mangled up? I mean, at least have a couple of cuts on you.
All good points, but I'm telling you right now, remember, our timing was when I finally got back to England, from England, finally made my deals with the right network. It ended up being Fox. They were the right attitude for it. They recognized it was an investigation, and that's what we're showing. And it's in progress. Investigation means in progress. Jonathan Frakes' last word. You know,
I'm not reflecting anything on you. I know that, I mean, this was a well orchestrated hoax in some ways, and I agree with a lot of things you're saying.
That's an understatement. This is a hoax beyond any level we've seen before. You've got the Howard Hughes biography fraud. You've got the Hitler diaries. This eclipses both, as I was speaking to my attorney today about it. This goes into layers of tomfoolery with the networks. So let me finish what I was saying before.
Yeah.
So in 2006, we knew John Humphreys made the fake. No help from anything. No real frames. No real cameraman. What was that?
It was a sheep's brain.
Whatever. We didn't care about that. All we cared about was one thing. We knew we had the guy who used the sheep brains, the
raspberry jam.
We had the guy. It was not even debatable. But the networks felt we had done it. They didn't need any more. All of a sudden, I get a call from this manager, Russell, who represents John Humphreys, who says, Bob, you're not going to like what's about to happen. It's your worst nightmare. I said, what is that, Russell? Like not being able to get a deal for your client. That was part one. I wasted 3 years of my time going to LA. What else? He goes, oh, well, there's going to be a documentary here in England, and there's going to be a feature film. I said, what the? I almost pulled the car off the road. You know, I was driving. I said,
yeah,
what
they must have been at a bar drinking, and they told you that.
No, I'm driving in the car like 5 PM on the freeway here in LA. And I go, you got to be kidding me. So, Russell, what's your plan here? Well, Bob, you know, John's going to fall right in with Santilli. I said, you can't undo the confession. What are you talking about? So they go up and they make this movie with Ed and Deck, these two comedic guys, one playing Ray Santilli, one playing Gary Schofield. They put out this movie that they claimed that there was real film. It was a Volker Spielberg looking like a crazy man from Germany. Oh, I love that the best part about Volker Spielberg. So Volker Spielberg, who met me on the street in London, he said to me, Bob, let me ask you a question. First things out of his mouth, basically. What do you think of the autopsy footage? He speaks perfect English, you know? I go, well, first of all, Volker, nice that you speak perfect English. What was all that like quietness at the screening, okay? And number two, I don't know. That's my reason for being here. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm a journalist. I want to know. Because let me tell you something. There's a better chance that this alien autopsy is real than 6 million Jews were killed by Hitler. I said, what the blank are you talking about?
There's a better chance of seeing Jesus if you're going to say this thing is real.
Then he said, are you Jewish? And I go, yeah, but what does that have to do with anything? So this guy had kind of an agenda to kind of get into my skin, you know, blah, blah, blah. I didn't care. And I still feel he's going to be investigated, this guy.
The people that you called in that were undecided, I get scared about, because if you had doctors in there looking at this, and they don't know the difference between a human brain and a sheep brain, or blood and raspberry jam, because that's what they used was raspberry jam. They used some chicken parts. They used cow knuckles to create this thing. Now, a normal person might not know, I mean, stuff like that. But if you show this to a person who's done hundreds of autopsies,
thousands, not hundreds.
Thousands, okay, thousands. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I mean, thousands of autopsies, and he doesn't know what a human brain looks like compared to a sheep's brain or raspberry jam to real blood. I mean, I'm never going back to the doctor again.
With all due respect, that's all hindsight. When this was released, and for the years I described, up until 2006 even, there were people who gave it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that it could be real. Even though we had been speaking to the special effects guy for 4 years in 2002 on that he was telling us verse and chapter. I made it. I just went to the library, got some books. I had a guy named Spiros, that's my cameraman. We basically went and presented this as a real film. It's fake. And he took great pride in how he created the creature, how he was able to cut into it. And it was only after being given a deal by Santilli and his film company, Warner Brothers UK, that he decided that now I'm going to change my story again. And now, by the way, people on Capitol Hill have been referring to the Alien Autopsy when they're talking about biologics and they're talking about having film the government had. When you see the complete 360, this film is
on the Hill. I don't. You could put a lollipop in front of them, and they're telling you that's an alien.
Well, we did. The lollipop was a guy named Lou Elizondo who never worked for any UFO government anything. He was affiliated with Bob Bigelow. Bob Bigelow was affiliated with Harry Reid's $22 million gift that was given by a black budget, kind of like, hey, look the other way to my constituent. There was no government study. ASWAP had nothing to do with UFOs. ATIP was a name made up by Harry Reid and Elizondo. There was no government UFO program of any kind at all. And here we are with Luna. Here we have all these people from the Capitol Hill side. It's scary. It's scary how crazy some of these people are. But in the end, it was one of the most audacious frauds ever put forward by anyone. And we did our best. I mean, I always felt that I had the opportunity to tell the story for 3 years. That was great. I thought I was done. I thought I was finished. But then all of a sudden, when I met Humphreys, I went, okay, now we got to finish it. And we're not done yet. We're going to finish it now.
Okay. Now, Bob, back in the day, all right, when Vicki and I were still publishing UFO Magazine, you called me up one day. You had a new head of whatever department that was, guy by the name of Mike Darnell, who you were trying to convince to do basically a tell-all.
No, he was the same guy who did the footage show with the beginning.
Well, they kept rebuffing you.
No, the only difference was you missed one thing. It's been a long time.
So I ended up doing a 3-part series.
There was a guy in publicity that was representing Darnell. Darnell did not want to talk about the autopsy anymore. He was figuring we were done. I had covered it, finished it, goodbye. World's Greatest Hoaxes was the capper for us. The fact that I found Humphreys a few years later, whatever. He was being kept in a box by this head of publicity for Fox. He's the guy you really contacted for your article or a theory to put together. And he's the one who was defending Darnell. That's pretty much what you were about. So Darnell, he's a programming guy. He's trying to get ratings. If I could present the way he could get ratings and protect Rupert Murdoch, without anyone being embarrassed, it's a good show. And that's what
kind of like the 300-pound tumor he did, or animals that bite.
You give a little bit of power to somebody, and look what happens. But look, Mike, to be fair to Darnell, he was trying to make a name for himself. He was trying to do something out of the box. I walk in with an alien autopsy, and he's like, "Perfect, Bob. Is there any way that we can do this and have it not be held on like the Noah's Ark hoax that happened a year before at CBS? Are you aware of that? 2 years before? Are you
what
aware?
hoax?
The Noah's Ark hoax.
Oh yeah.
When you hear about who was behind that and who he got behind over the last couple of years, you won't believe it. I told you, Don, on the phone a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Well, we're right now, gentlemen. We have to take a break. We're at the top of the hour, break-wise. And when we get back, more with our very special guest tonight, Mr. Robert Kiviat, executive producer of the Alien Autopsy. Stick around.
Hold on to your seats, Cosmic Explorers. KGRA Digital Broadcasting, the unrivaled #1 source for raw, uncensored paranormal and UFO talk radio, has just unleashed a sizzling online merch store. Stay cosmic on the move with accessories, rugged phone cases, vibrant yoga mats, and notebooks perfect for jotting down UFO sightings. Ignite your obsession with the unexplained through bold, exclusive gear that demands attention. Kicking off with the Supernova, the store launches 2 heart-pounding collections, KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Bishop James Long. Every item you grab helps power the network and its groundbreaking shows. Stand with the truth seekers, act fast, score your stellar swag, and join the uprising today.
So you don't care about his life. You just care about covering up your little top secret stuff going on. Meanwhile, this man's dying. How dare you put these people in the military to defend us, and then when they come out, you just kick them to the curb.
MUFON is the voice of thousands of like-minded people who want to see change. We speak up against UFO secrecy. We engage governments and agencies around the world on the topic. We share information with the public through our journal, website, newsletter, social media, and even our own TV channel. When you join MUFON, you add your voice to the cause. Few things are more important in our time than understanding the UFO question. Join MUFON. Find your friends.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this very special episode tonight. Today being the 30th anniversary of the very first airing of the Alien Autopsy. Now, I got to tell you, the first time I saw any of this footage was prior to the airing. I had just finished doing my radio show at CRN. And I received a call after I got home from Bob, and he said, come on down to my office. He said, I promised you to take a look at this and tell me what you think. So the next morning, Vicki and I drove down there, and I watched. I got to tell you, initially, this blew me away. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. It was very compelling at first blush, until I started doing a little investigation and research. Bob, did you find Santilli to be an inadvertent liar to you?
No, actually, I think he's probably a bit of a sociopath. There's no doubt about it. Here's a guy sitting literally in a chair just a few months ago, as I understand it, a year ago, describing how he kind of lied to everyone, and somehow lying was justified through some strange rationale he had that that it's okay to restore the film like you have a Rembrandt or a Picasso, or he uses the analogy of the Last Supper, Da Vinci. You know, literally, like if you have a painting and you have to come in and kind of fix the brushstrokes, he's comparing it to restoring a painting, but you have to be pathologically losing your mind to even say something like that. So I think Santilli probably has a degree of sociopathic nature.
Well, you've been doing the UFO thing for decades. Okay? You've been working in this for decades. In all that period of time, why do you think so many within this so-called field are compelled to attempt to hoax the public?
This is a great question, Don. And it's really the key behind the new documentary I'm doing, a series I'm doing. We as a public understand the UFO mystery is a real mystery. As you know, and Mickey and you have found out through years of work, there's very little evidence, but there's some. And those pearls of evidence have to be really looked into and kind of like focused on. However, there's a natural human instinct to try to bamboozle, lie, take advantage, make a buck, try to get famous, whatever. And the UFO field seems to attract a group of people that are in that kind of category. And so when you see these people on Capitol today showing up and claiming all these crazy ideas with not one shred of evidence, you have to say, where's that coming from? And so it's the same exact thing that's going on now that was going on back then. We all know the names. To this day, I think there are people that say Ed Walters created all the interesting movies and photographs he made. I'll be quite honest with you. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure about Ed Walters to this day. How many of those films and videos you can outright say he's faking stuff, So I think there needs to be a lot of serious investigation when you deal with UFOs and this kind of claims. But people are out there continually hoaxing and faking and doing. And by the way, Don, you mentioned this alleged comet or whatever you've been hearing about. We should talk a little bit about that because you have Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb is a Harvard-educated, really illustrious writer of papers, by the way. And you know what? The people around Avi Loeb know him and have seen him for years and done peer-reviewed papers and all that kind of shit. You know what they say about Avi? He's paraphrased the famous Carl Sagan line. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. Avi's version is extraordinary claims demand extraordinary funding. What do you think Hal Puthoff has all these clowns showing up at Capitol Hill talking about Grumman and Lockheed and hiding UFOs in hangars? We need money to investigate this stuff. It's all about the dollars, boys.
I wrote a year and a half ago a paper on disclosure, okay? And in that paper, I basically tore down the field as I saw it from the time I was writing on it. It took me weeks to get the thing done. And in there, I talked about a lot of things. Now, one of the things that I've noticed, not only there, but in the years that I've been doing this crazy job, people, in my opinion, Bob, and I want to get your remark on it, people seem to be terrified at being confronted with what may be the reality of a lot of this. Now, you mentioned Grush, David Grush. During his congressional testimony in 2023, he was asked the question, well, has anybody ever been killed or died while pursuing this subject? Killed or died? And his answer was yes.
Oh, you can read a book and know people have claimed 22 scientists.
That may very well be, but we're talking about Congress. And those people in Congress, to me, as an ex-cop, Chris Deperno as an ex-cop, we chewed on this forever. Nobody had the wherewithal to say, wait a minute, where, how, why, who? Okay? Now that would seem to be at the forefront, wouldn't you think?
Every time this guy has been asked to give any kind of tangible evidence to his claims about anything, he says he has to go into a skiff or go into this and go into that. And every time they ask him, can he come back, he comes up with a reason he can't come back. Talk about fraud. The fraud being perpetrated by Elizondo and company is as egregious, if not more egregious, than Sandilli's fraud. And it's funny how there's a linkage between the two, because Al Puthoff is out there telling people that footage could well be part of the evidence that they're talking about. These people are out of their minds. And by the way, Puthoff was exposed years ago by me and Geraldo Rivera for taking advantage of people that believed in people like Ingo Swann in the psychic power area. You know, just because you have great psychic phenoms like Ingo Swann appears to be, or a few other people, that does not mean you can go and teach the entire military to become psychic warriors and kill people by stopping their heart with your brain.
The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The movie was a classic comedy, but in reality, it wasn't a comedy. It was based on some real truth. So why would you convince a government, or how can you convince a government that you need money to go stop a goat's heart, to use your analogy, okay? When in reality, you have no proof of that. The same way you try to convince Congress, you need to go into like skiffs and secret meetings, and you can't produce one piece of evidence, not even one UFO video we're talking about. I've had dozens and dozens of videos that belong in these kind of hearings before there was any AI or high-end digital graphics available. Here's where the evidence of UFOs really lie, in the older material, before all this like tomfoolery and bullshit started.
Well, let me go around the table again. Let me start with Commander Cobra, because, you know, we've been doing a lot of talking and they've been sitting there very quiet. Commander?
Bob, I got to squeeze a lot in here.
Please.
I really enjoy hearing you run down this. So follow me along. I'm going to try to condense this down.
Okay.
Orson Welles, October 30th, 38, puts out War of the Worlds.
Okay.
The East Coast goes crazy. The West Coast, on time delay, goes crazy. My dad was about 6 or 7 months old, if I'm doing the calculations correct. And the neighbor bangs on the door. Artie, get your kid. That was my grandfather, my dad's dad. You got to get out of here. The Martians have landed. Okay?
Right in it.
So I think that kind of an event is studied, even historically now. And you touched upon a really important part before the AI bullshit, before this whole thing about deep fakes, some fake, partial fake, even got on there. So that piece is there. I think that's one of the touchstone events that set people to think about this, because I think when you look at Roswell and what did or did not happen there was something that the government and many governments knew was in the making. And this was to be ready for it. And they used this as an early crowdsourcing way to go. Now, here's the point I'm trying to drive at. What people really need to appreciate about you coming on, and what Don has done, what Chris has done, and I would also point out to what the Padre has done, is that kind of classical investigation that no longer is in vogue. We don't have journalism anymore. We have some kind of pseudo cosplay that's going on, that's passing off how I feel is reality. It's not. No.
And by the way, you nailed a great point about 1938 and the War of the Worlds thing with Orson Welles. I wrote a paper on it in college, and I think that probably woke me up to everything you're saying, that even if it wasn't real, Orson Welles in his own genius had tested the public to see how they would react if you had this thing. And he knew, he was a master of hoaxes. People should look, not a master of hoaxes, but getting a master's degree about knowledge about hoaxes. And he did a movie years later called F is for Fake. People should look at this. It's a very interesting documentary.
It's absolutely great film.
Well, to be perfectly fair to everybody that was freaked out during that episode, the world was in a hell of a shape then.
Oh, yeah.
The Japanese were marching all
Don,
over
not
Asia.
that I disagree with you, but how about right now?
Exactly.
Yeah. But we're talking about Orson Welles' War of the Worlds.
I know, but what I'm trying to say is
Nazis.
I don't think this has ever changed. The thing that changed was we had a major change in how media was being sent through the United States and the world globally. It was radio, and radio had really at that point, in a very short amount of time, from Marconi shooting the signal not too far from where I live in Cape Cod, across the Atlantic, we went to a major media, plus we had film. Now, we're in a world where AI is talked about every second of every day, and it's completely thwarted, and we're ready for another kind of Orson Welles thing. And I'm telling you, my point is, it's Bob and it's guys like you and Don and Chris that hammer at the truth in some kind of a logical process. And some people are getting that, while the rest are running over the cliff.
There's something that I just want to kind of encapsulate this in some way. You had 1938, Don's right. You had all that terrible news coming out of Europe. You had Hitler marching into places with troops. You had, stuff going on in the eastern part with Japan. It was obvious America was either going to have to get into this war or probably look at the world very differently in a few years. So people were very nervous. And for the time for you to say that monsters were invading from Mars, there was a little bit of a tipping point where there was a little bit of lunacy going on in the mind of the American public and fear of what may come down the road. Having said that, 1995, you have the X-Files. You have my own shows at Unsolved Mysteries about UFOs caught on tape. You have things happening. People are starting to take it seriously. They're starting to say, wait a minute, maybe there is something to these UFO reports or UFO videos. And then comes Chantilly. Just like, Orson Welles saw an opportunity, I guess Chantilly said, here's our opportunity. The story, as I understand it, is Chantilly was talking to this AK music group. They were kind of doing videos and some karaoke kind of things. And they weren't really a big company. And they sat down with Chantilly and they said, what do you want to do? And he said, well, imagine if we could get like an autopsy of an alien, like that Roswell story, So he got inspired by people like Unsolved Mysteries. Before I ever joined them, they did a big thing about Roswell. Roswell's out there from the Berlitz book from 79. It was out there, Stan Friedman had been talking about Roswell ad nauseum throughout the late 80s and early 90s. So, it got down to the point where somebody just said, hey, let's make one and see if it flies. Let's see if it flies. Well, that's one thing. But now here we are in the AI world. I believe a lot of producers realize this too, that in a few years, you're not going to be able to say something is genuinely real or not. It's going to be such a blur between AI. We took a photograph, just a simple photograph, and we animated the photograph. Let me tell you something. If you could just animate a photograph to look like a moving person, and you could take a film and you can make it appear whatever you want, I got to tell you, we may not be able to rely in courtrooms on footage as much as we would like to, like surveillance footage. I think surveillance footage is going to become a huge thing now, where surveillance cameras are going to have to be encoded with such a thing where you're going to know if it was ever tampered with. It's like opening up something and breaking the seal, You're going to have to make sure a surveillance camera's seal is not broken or something like that. So in the end, I think we're looking at older footage that could prove that we had something in our skies. We did not know what it was, which means they may well be still here. And we're going to be looking at that database. One good thing about Capitol Hill, which we're going to be looking into in my new project, Gillibrand from New York, Senator Gillibrand, she said at one of the last sub-hearings, look, whatever we want to say about UFOs, she said the word UFOs, by the way, not UAPs. She says, whatever you want to say about UFOs over the last 70 years, we know there's a mystery. We know there's something here. We'd like to ask anyone to send in your videos, your photos to the scientists at Arrow. Okay, now we have a populace that does have cameras and has had cameras for the decades I've been working in television and showing these films and videos of UFOs, which predated the ability to make those fakes. So I think that's going to become a huge thing this year for me, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about it.
Let me go to Padre. Padre?
I have a couple of questions. The first one is from one of our regulars in chat, Kentucky Skywatcher. Bob, he would like to know if there's any case or incident in the UFO field that you have seen and regarded as authentic?
Oh yeah, there's a couple I'm just talking about right now in the new project. We're working on it now. There's a couple we'll just right off the bat. I'm not going to go into the controversial ones because I still think those could well prove out to be actual craft of an unknown origin. But I think when you're looking at things like a 2003 video shot by a fellow named Jeff Willis in Phoenix, Arizona, here's a metallic disc, clearly, without a doubt, on camera, moving over his house and then rappelling away at a speed, all caught within the camera, that blows away the FLIR video or the gimbal video these Navy guys are trying to make a big deal about. When you see that video in my new show, I think they'll say, well, where's that been? Then there are these UFOs shot in space during one of the shuttle missions. STS-48, Don's an expert in that, so I'm not going to talk about STS-48. I'll leave that to Don. That's where there may be a little firefight in space. But you have very similar footage from the shuttle where you see two UFOs coming in, and one makes a sharp right, almost like a 90-degree turn. Nothing we have in our arsenal, in our technology, can turn like that, like on almost like a 60-degree angle, just made without stopping. Boom, boom. Okay? And then we have something, just another, we can go, there are probably like a dozen I could mention. There was something over an area of Israel called Hatzor, it's a kibbutz called Hatzor. And in this kibbutz, you had people for 3 nights filming what appears to be a gigantic building in space. It's almost like, is it in space? Is it in the sky? It appears to be in the sky, not in space. When I say space, I mean in the atmosphere. And it appears to be gigantic with like almost like a hallway type feeling to it. It's clearly caught on camera, and it's caught 3 different nights by 2 different photographers. This is a film that Israel's been talking about for a long time, which we're going to be showing. I showed it in one of my second Fox UFO shows, but the people at Fox wanted me to make these like clip shows where we'd show the clip, show a few seconds about it, and move on. Well, we're going to be showing this film in all its glory. And there are many. There are about 4 or 5 others I can mention like this.
And my follow-up question had to, going back to what you were saying about artificial intelligence and film producers. When you receive footage from somebody who's claiming it to be something, does the producer have any moral obligation to really make sure it is what it is, or is it just simply,
Absolutely.
Okay?
I would never touch something and say it's real when I know it to be a hoax. Okay. I would never put something on television that I know I'm pulling the wool over someone's eyes. First of all, I couldn't live with myself. Secondly, it would probably destroy my career. And that's why most people didn't want to touch the Alien Autopsy and things like that, because they don't want to be found guilty of that should they be accused of that. But I would never
kind of like Geraldo and Al Capone's empty vault, huh?
Wait, again, Geraldo did not know.
I know. I was kidding, Bob.
Well, put it this way, I don't believe he did, and I've spoken about his brother about me. I don't believe there's any chance that Geraldo knew anything other than it was his fault, and let's see what's in it. Like, and people made that connection to the Alien Autopsy, and it's like the Alien Autopsy again. Here's a film. Let's investigate it.
Chris, you're up.
Chris, you're up, buddy.
Jeremy Corbell, Bob.
What do I think of Jeremy Corbell?
Yeah.
Jeremy Corbell was an opportunist who happened to go out of his way to pull good old George Knapp out of the semi-retirement of UFOs. And, I mean, George has told the story himself. George was more than happy to let this kid, this young guy, to George anyway, in George's age, go out and revamp and retell some of the stories that George wanted to tell. But unfortunately, George would have never went as far as Corbell did on, Bob Lazar. And he never would have went as far as he did on, the implant baloney on people's bodies. And he surely wouldn't have gone as far as he's gone on Skinwalker Ranch. I know that because I know George over the years. I had on one of my shows on Fox. And I also know George over the years comparing cases and comparing our research. So I know that Corbell was an opportunist who saw that George might be willing to let him exploit him, George, and he did. And I think George will regret the association down the road. I really do.
Now, I'm not saying this is true because I don't believe it is true, but Corbell put a video out saying that in the short distant future, this is, I think, about 6 months ago, Corbell put a video out saying that we're going to see a fake alien invasion, I believe.
How many people have said this bullshit? Don, how many years have we heard? Stephen Greer.
All the way back to 1992 when I broke the STS-48 story. I get a call from Richard Hoagland.
You got it. I was about to say Richard Hoagland. It's the original.
Right. But here's the thing, Bob. People are falling for it with this comet, and I'll say it's a comet that's out in space right now, this Atlas, whatever the thing is.
Careful, everyone here on this show today, because do we have to discuss Heaven's Gate? Do we have to discuss the 36 people off themselves, partially because they believed in no offense, Don, a remote viewer named Brown? You know what I'm talking about?
No. Courtney Brown cannot even sniff Ingo Swann's gaseous discharge.
You had public saying that there was this comet with a possible ship behind it, or not possible. An actual.
No, that was Art Bell. Art Bell's the one that blew that up.
Art Bell with Courtney Brown.
Yes.
That's what we're looking at.
And let's not forget Whitley Strieber.
All of them. So here's the thing. What are the odds, after hearing all of Avi Loeb and hearing other people, even Neil deGrasse Tyson, when you compare all the notes you've got, go back to Avi Loeb himself, who said he believes it's probably just a comet. But he goes on Newsmax a couple of days ago just to keep fanning it.
I gotta tell you, I've got a lot of respect for Avi Loeb, and I'll tell you why.
By the way, back to the question before, a journalist's integrity, in the same question I asked from a guy from Harvard, and he would not have that moniker attached to him, Don, and I'll argue this all day long. This guy has been chasing these type of ideas to get funding for the last few years like nobody's ever done before.
He's not afraid to think outside the box.
And ask you for funding at the same time. And that's the problem here. The ethics involved in a scientist or a person like that, like when I wrote the Face on Mars article, Stephen Squires is in charge of all the Mars planning for our planet, basically. And he said in the article I wrote about the face on Mars, indifference to Hoagland and all the people that are claiming the face is artificial. He said, look, I don't believe it's artificial. But if I did want to bring interest in space, faring, and I wanted to make people more interested in space and spend money on space, I might say there's a chance it's artificial more than I am. But that would be disingenuous. That would not be integrity for a scientist, what he's really trying to say. So I say, Don, look, Avi Loeb is an interesting guy, but because he flip-flops all over the place, and then he asks for money to study the things he's flopping around, it's not me saying...
Well, science runs, Bob, we both know science runs on money. Who's going to give him a grant for that? Looking for LGMs.
Everything he proposed so far. The thing that was down the Baltic thing, give me a break. That wasn't even worth talking about. Going down into the ocean, finding alleged evidence in the sediment of some kind of meteor that was a spaceship. This is becoming insanely loopy. And he's a Harvard guy.
He found, in full disclosure, Bob, he found some very interesting debris.
Peer-reviewed by nobody. Wait, peer-reviewed by nobody. And that's where you get credibility. Peer review is where you get people to come and check your research, check your findings. He writes papers on things for sure. But about these things, the peer review process has hurt him badly. So all I'm saying to you is, if you have the kind of credentials that he has, you should be much more circumspect. You should be much more careful than a producer, even than me. So I think that's where things get a little bit crazy. And that's where you've got guys showing up on Capitol Hill, throwing around their credentials. And it doesn't mean much when you do shit like that. So all I'm saying to you is you might be a fan of Avi. I am not. And by the way, Stephen Squires.
I've never met the man. I've never met him.
It's nice if somebody's keeping it alive as a possibility that we're not alone in the universe. But how you go about that, it's like the question I was asked earlier. As a producer, you have your own personal integrity. You have your own things to live with at night when you go to bed. And if this guy, Avi Loeb, is sleeping really well, it's probably because he's looking at some funding he's got coming in the next day. Because
I just have to jump in real quick, Bob. I changed my background. No Bucks, no Buck Rogers from the right stuff. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time. Tom Wolfe put that in his book. No Bucks, no Buck Rogers. I think there's a happy medium out there. I agree. I recently heard the story about the meteor, the investigation, the things that they brought up. Some things are interesting, but it's not presented in a model that I'm used to. It's presented, and it's not even a Hollywood model that it's presented in. It's presented in this new age kind of, I feel this way, and this is why you need to watch it. I'm too old to buy that quite the same way.
I want to qualify what I was saying about to Don. Don could have his own interest in Avi Loeb, and that's fine. Avi Loeb has a responsibility to be honest with people, because they look up to people at Harvard. But as I found it over the years, gentlemen, just because you went to Harvard doesn't give you ethics, doesn't give you morals, doesn't give you that. I don't believe Harvard is well known for teaching morals and ethics, by the way. So the bottom line is, I think you have to be a very, very good consumer in our world today. You got no news gathering of any real merit. You got people wanting their own version of news. But I think guys like Don and you guys, you could share the objective view that you're not getting from news media, and that would be a great help. And I think.
Well, who do you like, Bob? Who do you like as a ufologist?
Don and Vicky.
Don and Vicky.
I vote for that.
I'm not even just saying to make them feel good. That's
sincere, Bob. That's sincere, Bob. But
there's not one other. I mean, look, people. Let me just say this: one guy at Unsolved Mysteries, this director, I saw they made like a best of Unsolved Mysteries package, and they talked about one of my big stories was this Guardian UFO, which we'll talk about some other time maybe. And Guardian UFO landing, a thumbprint the Guardian put on the tape. It's a very interesting case. He called me a UFO researcher. He said, Bob Kiviat, who came to Unsolved Mysteries as a producer, but he was a researcher, and he has a unique background to be a UFO researcher too. Well, in that regard, Vicky and Don are the only two other UFO researchers that I respect. And so I think it's a pretty high bar, because when I moved out here, they had their magazine called UFO Magazine. I was reading it voraciously in New York, and I felt I would come in every 2 months, right? So I was reading it at at New Age bookstores, whatever. But they were writing like journalists. They were interviewing the people. They were getting the facts best they could. Show me two other ufologists or researchers like that in the last 30-something years. And I'll say, great. I don't know. Show me them. Who are they? Who had a magazine? Who treated it like journalism 101, who worked their tails off to publish it every month, who had people come in and try to steal their magazine from them, who were not journalists, who were not ufologists. So I don't think there are really any real ufologists or UFO really out there. I mean, who are my favorite? Are there any? You give me some names of people. I'll be glad to.
How about Russ Cohart?
Russ Cohart is one of the most unethical, non-credible, by the way, fired by Australia 7 for doing some of the worst reporting, accusing people of pedophilia, ruining their lives. And News Nation hires him like that. This guy is so, in my opinion, hard to even watch or listen to.
So what did you think of the Jake Barber interview?
Laughable, ridiculous. Every one of the things this guy has been involved with is going to be exposed for the joke it is. And I'll make it a mission to do that.
How about the Michael Herrera interview? Now, Michael claimed that he was...
These are all the News Nation, Russ Kolar crowd, you mean? The people have been rolling in like a conveyor belt of non-credible people? It's back to the said beautifully before. There's no news media anymore. It's whatever feels good to you. They feel no sense of responsibility at News Nation to be, for whatever reason, credible journalists. I'm trying to talk to their news director now about interviewing both Geraldo, Coulthard, and the cast of characters they have calling themselves journalists. Geraldo, I'm trying to save. At 80 years old, this man is good to me. He had a very, very, I think, honest career. He might not be everyone's cup of tea, but what you saw was what you get. Even the Geraldo's vault, that's fine. Capone's vault. I think when you look at Geraldo, the way he's been mishandled and mistreated by News Nation, that's another story completely. So as you can see, I'm pretty passionate about this. Sure. And it's going to be something that when you mention Russ Kolar to me, you're pressing a button there. However, this guy got into the American...
Bob, today we say you're triggering me.
Uh-oh.
I don't think you have to tell Bob about triggering.
I'm telling you, Russ Kolar, when you mention Russ Kolar, you're talking about one of the most skeeviest guys you ever want to see. This guy is not, I don't think he even believes his own bullshit, to be quite honest. I don't think he does. And I have evidence of that. So the bottom line is the poorest of poor journalists, somebody who never should have been on American television. His credentials are, like I told you, negative credentials. He was fired for literally being caught misreporting from very famous people calling them pedophiles. So people should do their homework and find out who Russ Kolar really is.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff.
It won't take much. Go Google Russ Kolar, Australia 7. Why he was fired? Why he lost his job? It doesn't take much. You figure News Nation? You figure News Nation?
Oh, I'm just waiting for News Nation to serve me papers on a lawsuit. I just,
I would welcome any blowback from News Nation and their bevy of reporters about their UFO coverage. The person I get really interested in is Ansley Banfield. Here's a woman who's done crime reporting for these years, whatever. She's an ambulance chaser beyond. She will do a crime story. If it bleeds, it leads. She loves it. And Jeremy Corbell's images are very exciting to her. She made a move. He did a report about that plastic bag, whatever, flying through there, called the jellyfish or whatever UFO from Iraq. And she makes a big deal about that thing. And I almost couldn't believe it. I was laughing so hard. And the next thing she did prior to that, or before that actually, was the Las Vegas gigantic alien landing. That was literally a meteor that flew into Nevada that a bunch of family that I will be honest and say, they're probably not the most educated family in the world. And there they were claiming to News Nation, we have giant aliens in our backyard. Look at the video I shot. And you see this video. And all you can see maybe is a little bit of movement in the back over a fence. And it's like, that's an alien? And they ran that story with this gray-haired young guy who's like the reporter in the field. Comedy, I'm going to be rolling that into my next coverage. When you see this, you guys are going to get the popcorn and laugh your head off. And George Knapp was all over that too, and Corbell. I figured George would go better in Las Vegas, right? You figure that's his beat; he would know better. But I really feel bad for George because I gave George an opportunity to get on the right side of this stuff back in 2019. I got up in front of him at this loft in Nevada.
Seems like you have a soft heart for George.
I used to. I still do. I know what it's Hanu Musan in American's version. Someone who said, you know what? I'm known for this stuff. Let me just rip the cover off the ball. Let me just be like UFO gun, banzai, And now that basically George has accepted every story that he told me that he had very little, credible evidence for, like Bob Lazar, like Skinwalker Ranch. Now the giant beavers and all the other things that were going on at Skinwalker Ranch that he never could prove or even give any credence to. Now he's doing podcasts about them, and it's hysterical.
My last question for you before I turn it over to the other guys.
Right, exactly.
What was your favorite film that you did? I see a list of all your films. You did one called Alien Autopsy, the true story.
The last one I made
was JFK, the shocking truth.
The one that Don was in about, it was a decade ago, the aliens on the moon. Don and I had a chance to show the public some of the more interesting things that have been photographed on the moon that I believe are going to be back in play when we send our Artemis missions up, and I'll be getting ready for that. But that's my own feeling. As a journalist, all the years talking to Don, all the years talking to people like Buzz Aldrin, all the years talking to NASA, that was where we literally made an entire 2-hour show about NASA photography. It is whatever it is in these photographs, it's all NASA photography. So you can't impeach the source, right?
Yeah.
But there are people who say we never went into space. The Earth is flat, and we never went to the moon, of course. And they're the same people that listen to Russ Kolar. And I'm not joking. So where are we? It's a mess. So when I say my favorite show is the one that's going down life now, because of all the shows I've done, Don, maybe you want to comment on this. Artemis coming up as another round of us to focus back on the moon in these areas.
Well, the moon has been a mystery from day one. All right. When I began my lunar research, one of the things I discovered was a NASA technical report, TR-277, okay, which for 400 years, astronomers, world-class astronomers, have been detailing anomalies that they've witnessed with the moon. For example, craters that inexplicably start to glow, okay, and will glow for a week, couple of weeks, and then boom, it's gone. Or domes that would appear on the moon and sit there for weeks or even months. And one day an astronomer will go to take a look at them. Inexplicably, they've moved off to somewhere else. How? Who? What? Where? When? Okay. So yeah, I have no doubt in my mind, with all the research I did, that the moon, like it or not, ladies and gentlemen of America, is occupied, not by humans, but by somebody else.
I think Don's right. And I think that's really going to be the story of the next decades to come. What we find on the moon, what we share about the moon, I think it's going to put UFOs in a whole different category.
And what we've known for a long time. I think that's going to come clear too.
Only one, if just one of the photographs, and Don had a famous one of a pipe going through a crater. But you see, overall, all you got to come up with is one photograph that shows technology on the moon before we got there. And it's like one UFO photo, one UFO video. That's why I'm staying focused on the videos from the past, before we had AI and digital graphics to the point where you could make something like Spielberg could make, And so I think the moon is going to become that kind of new bastion of mystery, and people are going to be talking about it a lot. I'm proud to say, Don, that Aliens on the Moon to this day is doing extremely well on Tubi. This is Fox's portal, basically, for things that are not on the network, and it's just a nice kind of serendipity that Fox and their Tubi channel has given Aliens on the Moon a real platform. I hear about this quite frequently over the months, that it's doing so well on Tubi. So if you ever got a chance, you can go to Tubi, and there's Aliens on the Moon.
Now, to be perfectly honest, you well know I had a major heartburn with that implication of, or the insertion of the alien Mona Lisa horse shit.
I don't believe it. But that was handled in, I think, in the way it should be. It was just something that was popular on the internet. All we were showing. I know it had more meaning to you because it was in the show. But it belonged in it for the reasons that NBC convinced me of it. That 70 million people were looking at on the internet.
Let's look at an alien babe with naked boobs.
Well, we couldn't ignore it. So we let this guy, Warren, talk about it and then say it's likely a fake. There's a guy doing this for a living now. There's a guy named, what's his name? It's a
Frenchman?
No, I don't want to give him any kind of credit on the internet because I don't want to, build his bank account at all. But he does this kind of thing where he tells a story for literally 45 minutes, and then he goes, "But is it real?" And then he says 5 minutes after he got his views and his clicks, telling you that like things that I've debunked or you debunked on or whatever. So it's just AJ's his name, AJ. You just look it up on the internet, you'll see what I'm talking about.
The White Files.
Yeah, I mean, the guy. By the way, it's a group. It's not a guy. These guys got together. They're pretty sophisticated in New York, and they put together a little bit of a production group, and they come up with these very interesting, kind of like funny with a goldfish in the bowl. But the concept is what we said earlier today: that you have no more news gathering. You have very little way these people can check the facts. They could try after they watch 45 minutes of AJ talking on Y-Files. But then at the end, he always comes back with a likely debunking or trying to put it into its right place. So I don't know about the ethics of that when the goal is to keep people on your channel as long as you can. That's the game of the internet, even for Google. So I don't know, guys. I just find this to be really unethical. How's that, right? Unethical. And it's something I would never do.
Padre, it looks like you got something on your mind.
I was just seeing here in chat, we have another question here. One of our chatters, Kentucky Skywatcher, asks again, Bob, what do you think about USOs, the submerged objects?
Oh, it's a great subcategory. I'm sure Don could speak to it too. There are a couple of cases that I think are legitimately USOs or underwater craft of unknown origin, I guess the best way to call it. Stevenson was a very famous author who wrote a lot about this years ago. There are cases even during MacArthur's time in the Pacific, and there are cases that have been legitimately, chronicled by our government. I don't know. I don't remember the case, Don. Maybe you know it by name, but there was indeed
Devil's Triangle. But right off of Santa Monica.
Which one was that? Describe that to me.
It's been years that it's been suspected that there's some type of underwater facility there, not human, but something else. And UFOs have been seen coming and going out right at Santa Monica, for God's sake.
I don't have it in front of me. I know, guys have nothing but anecdotal, historical, stories like Richard Dolan that talks about. But I know that one case in particular, I can't give it to you today, but it took place along, I believe, in the eastern sea area.
Shag Harbor? Was it the Shag Harbor?
No. And I believe it was potentially, and they followed these craft far, far away, the Navy did. And it's a very legitimate USO case. It's one or two of those that I point to. But again, not caught on camera. You would have figured submarines, after all these years, they would have seen things. There are so many subs out in the water all the time. So, but I think MacArthur and the people...
Well, they probably have, but they can't talk about it, Bob.
But again, I hate to throw cold water on anything that's not on tape or something else. But if something, like I said about Roswell at the beginning of my career, if there wasn't something evidentially on photo, radar, audio, something at least to sink your teeth into, I don't touch it. I don't think that's honest journalism. I think it's speculation. I think why would I be any different if I said something regarding Avi Loeb? Again, as speculative as he is, I wouldn't do that either. So if you look at most of my work on film and television, there's always a film, a video, an audio. There's always something we can bring into a courtroom that we could analyze, discuss, and decide, like a jury, but not anecdotal. You know, the British found years ago some of the worst witnesses are eyewitnesses themselves. So even eyewitnesses can't be trusted that much. So you need some other corroboratory evidence that makes your story valid. Without that, how could you possibly convince anyone there's anything there? So that's about regarding USOs. But I know there are a couple of very interesting cases in the files of the government that are worthy of looking into. But they require AI graphics because we have nothing to show.
Got another question here on chat from Kathleen. She asks what you think about something that's supposed to happen in November about a UFO supposed to come down and visit us through vetoes, whatever that is. You have an opinion?
I would recommend this person start listening to what has been said tonight. You have to develop a place to go vet your information. You can't just hear someone say and accept something's coming in November, watch out. Like Don said, we heard this from Richard Hoagland in 1991. We heard it from Stephen Greer almost every month of the year. I mean, by the way, if anyone in this world, whether it be a journalist, a podcast, even this show, has a guy named Stephen Greer on their show and doesn't call it a comedy, I don't know what to call it. He came to a meeting in Unsolved Mysteries. He came piggyback on somebody else's meeting who was joining me for a meeting in Unsolved Mysteries years ago, 1993. And he comes into the office and I said, "Who are you? And why are you here?" He said, "Well, I came in with this other guy." I said, "I understand that you weren't invited here. Why are you in my office?" He says, "Well, I'm going to be the #1 UFO researcher in the world." I said, "Really? Well, that's a lofty goal, Mr. Greer. What do you do right now?" He says, "Well, I'm an EMT. I'm an emergency technician." I said, "Well, that gives you a little bit of credibility, but why would you possibly, boast that you're going to be the greatest UFO researcher ever?" "Well, Bob, I've got contacts in the government." His contacts were, he was going through Bob Exler to get to guys like Ron Pandolfi, and led nowhere. The guy is full of baloney. This guy is one of the biggest bullshit artists that ever walked the face of the earth. And Stephen Greer, get ready, buddy. By the way, it's time for someone to take this issue on, because we need someone to point the people who believe and are interested in this stuff. They want to know about this stuff. They want to know. So,
Bob, I gotta tell you, buddy, I felt exactly like you are espousing right now 35 years ago. And as a result, okay, I took on a number of people, all right, exposed them not only in the pages of UFO magazine, but on my radio show. William Milton Bill Cooper.
Oh, yeah. Guy
Kirkwood, a.k.a. Noel Bryce Cornwall. Okay, George Green in the Pleiadian invasion. And what basically ended up happening? Not a zero. All right, people that want to believe are gonna goddamn believe. And don't confuse me with facts. This is what I've learned in almost now 40 years.
Don, but they take money. Here's another thing. Greer milks these people. It's like milking believing religious zealots, and that's not right.
Hey, do you remember my buddy Richard Saraday?
Yes.
Okay, Richard was working with us, and we had an invitation at UFO Magazine to come down and cover one of Stephen Greer's lectures or whatever the hell he was doing. They were upset because we never covered them. Well, obviously we didn't, and you know why.
Of course not.
But anyway, Vicky and I talked about it, and she said, "Well, I'm not going to go. You don't want to go. Why don't we get Richard to see if he would go?" So we called Richard. Richard says, yeah, sure, I'd love to do it. And to make a long story short, he gets down there, walks in with his UFO magazine credentials, and they say, $350, please. He says, what? Well, yeah. Well, no, you don't understand. I'm with UFO magazine. $350, please. So he turned around and he walked out. Now that will tell you about Greer and money.
So how do you feel about seeing people continue this on when you know what was brought up today about how there's no news media, people just accept whatever they like and feel good about. These people are running rampant now. It's almost like a license to steal. So isn't there a need for even a UFO magazine to come back or something like that?
Well, gentlemen, I'm just been notified by the producer that let me see. Yeah, I think we are out of time.
That's
Man,
good.
2 hours blew by. Bob, once again, thank you so much, my friend.
My pleasure.
It really was. This was spectacular. I appreciate it.
And by the way, I'm sorry I had to be so cut and dry about things, but this year is going to be a very different year. And on the Alien Autopsy anniversary, it's time for some real serious journalism. Really.
All right. Well, gentlemen.
Capital J, right, Bob?
What was that?
Capital J.
You better believe it. The real kind, not the phony kind.
I love
As
that.
always,
I love the New York cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening. Have a super fantastic weekend.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll catch you next time. Good night.
Good night. See you.